somewhat similar system, but the details change, and that's kind of, you don't get to do a full reset. You have to take what you know and then tweak some of the edges.
I don't know that it really matters, being a detailed guy or not. I think it's just important to go back and learn and put in the time and not take anything for granted and make sure that you're asking questions, you're spending time studying. For me, it's been a lot of time on flashcards, just trying to memorize plays and terms and formations and protections and just the rules around all those things so that it becomes instinctual. And you feel like an 8th grader studying for a quiz at school the next day with the way you go home each night and study, but that's really what it does take to come out here on the practice field and be able to just play instinctually.
How similar is this to the systems you've had before, mainly back in Washington, I guess, when you were with them?
There are elements that are the same, but it's amazing how much things have evolved. If looking back to like when I was with Sean McVay in 2016, Sean's offense, to the degree that this would have similarities, has gone a long ways over the last 5 years, and there's been a lot of changes. The league changes, and there's been a lot of changes with that. So, and I'm sure if you were to, take a snapshot of any offense I've played in, if you look back 5 years later, there's always a lot that's changed because that's just the nature of things that you have to keep up with the times. So, there's a lot that's new. There's foundational, undertones that are similar, but I just learn it all as if it's new and just got to learn it as the 2022 Vikings offense.
Did you get to pay attention from afar to those changes within the McVay thing, or are you just so locked in during the season that you don't really get to see league-wide trends like that?
That's a great question. It's something I've always kind of done when I watch the coaches that I've worked with, when they're coaching. Just observing, hey, can I recognize this or that? And if I can't, what has changed? And you're reading between the lines a little bit because you don't have all the answers, but you can certainly observe, and with the TV copies, you can hear what's the words being said, and you can know when that's exactly what we used to do, and you can know that, hey, that's nothing like what we used to do.
Kirk, what have you seen from BC, especially like mindset-wise, just sort of how he's weathered a year, obviously injured, and staying mentally engaged?
Yeah, Olabisi and Irv are two guys that missed all last season that I was expecting big things from. I remember in 2020 when Adam was out with COVID for 2 games, I believe, or 1 game against Carolina, and we really put Olabisi in the spot where Adam would normally be. And he just had a great game. He kept getting open. He was reliable. And I remember thinking that in year 3, he was going to take a big step and really show up. And then, unfortunately, tore his knee in one-on-ones over here in training camp. And so I've always had a high opinion of him, and I think that in year 4 now, I do expect him to have a very productive year and provide a great deal of depth for us. So I'm excited about him. And then Irv, much the same way. I felt he was one of our most impactful players during training camp last year. And even in the preseason games that he played, I thought he made an impact and was making plays and putting good things on tape. And then he hurt his knee against the Chiefs, and that was the last we saw of him. So both those guys, I'm really excited about. I think it's year 4 for both of them. Expect big things.
What's the best part of this current scheme that possibly previous schemes with this team you didn't have? What do you like the most about what you're seeing from this team?
There's nothing that stands out particularly. I think so many offenses, there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of carryover. It's really just a new way to call it. It's a different language to really say the same thing. And so you're learning a new language just as much as you're learning a new system. And that's really where studying has to happen.
Has studying with the flashcards always been an effective method for you?
Well, it's an effective method. It's been an effective method for me, but not one I've used a lot in the past. I was kind of chuckling to myself just the fact that was how I was studying, because I thought, you got to learn it somehow, and if this works, great, but this is the first time since really 2014 when Jake Gruden was hired, and then back in 2012 when I was a rookie coming from Michigan State to Kyle Shanahan's offense. Those were the only other 2 times in my career maybe I truly felt like I was learning it from scratch. I guess you could also say coming here in 2018 as well. So you had those moments in your career where you're saying, all right, I got to really lock in and learn this. But there were other years where there were changes, but they were more subtle. And so this is requiring a lot of studying.
Kirk,
So
now
what's
that-
familiar and what's, because you've had a different offensive coordinator every year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But this is a new coach. It's not just a new offensive
Correct.
coordinator. It's a new coach. So
Well
what's
said.
familiar, what's different about that kind of transition?
I think it's terminology, the actual language you're using. There's times where I'll look at Kellen or Sean and I'll say, well, this is just so-and-so from last year, but I've got to put a new word to it. And they'll say, yeah, exactly. So I'm just, they are trying to learn the new language too, but they know the old language, whereas our coaches now may not. So you kind of right now are speaking in two languages so that we can get to the point where we fully mastered the new offense.
It's just the scheme stuff is.
Right, Kirk? Like the scheme is going to be fundamentally different than what you guys did in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. So it goes beyond just the code words.
It certainly does, and I think 18 and 19 it changed. Going from the system we ran to then having Kevin as the OC and Gary Kubiak's influence, and then in 21 it changed. When you have some changes with the staff, and so there's always that evolution and of change. But certainly there are elements that are different, but there's only so much you can change. I mean, at the end of the day, you do have sort of these staple foundational pieces that are pretty consistent across the league.
Kirk, you obviously spent your first 4 years here